Hello everyone, welcome to another video with Rahul. Post my last video, a lot of people requested me to share my experience on how I passed the AWS solution after professional exam. So in this video, I'm going to give just general tips on what is the scope of the exam, what are the challenges, and what are the resources that I used. I'll create few more videos which will talk about the key concepts that you need in each area, say compute database, to pass the exam. Okay, let's first understand why the exam is so tough. Basically, there are 75 questions that you need to complete in 3 hours. So each question you get about 2.5 minutes to answer. The questions are very, very long. The question itself are 4 to 6 lines, and then the answers, each answer is about 2 to 3 lines. So it will take you a lot of time to just go through the question and the options. Then in each option, you would have multiple services, and you have to look at the keyword in the question, say whether it's cost effective or highly available. To give you an example, say it would want to create a hybrid architecture, and then it will give you an option saying that in one option it will say that okay, you will connect through an AWS partner using the direct connect, having two connections, and then have the VPN as a backup. And then it will give you another option saying that okay, you will connect your direct connect with two partner locations with two redundant connections, so that's four connections. So what is the right solution? So you would have to look at whether it needs a cost effective solution or it needs a highly available redundant solution. So depending on what is the question, you would either choose the four connections or the two connections and the VPN. The fourth thing is that it's not just a test of AWS knowledge, it's also reading compression at speed, because there is a lot of reading that you need to do to come up um, at the right answer. And then there's time crunch. So I've given this is my fourth AWS certification. I've given 6 overall. In each of the other certifications, I always have had about 15-20 minutes to spare at the exam, but in this one I could complete only 72 questions. Okay, now you can go to this link. It will give you um, for each section what is the percentage of the exam. Okay, so what are the resources that I use for this exam? So I use the Stephen Marek's AWS Solution Architect Pro Udemy course. Uh, the problem with this course is that there's no hands-on, it's all theoretical. So if you have not probably looked at all the services hands-on, then that's a little bit of challenge. But overall, this course is really, really good. It talks about the most key concepts, just a 13-hour course, so it will save you a lot of time. The tutorial dojo practice test, I think I've used it before as well. I think they do a great job. I will highly recommend this. Then exam guide for scope of the exam. So let me just go to this link that is on the exam guide. So I'm on the exam guide. So you can see in this exam guide, it gives you a list of all the services that you need to study for. So one thing I made sure was that I at least know what each service does. Say in one of the options, it gives you use the service transcribe with other services. So if you don't know what transcribe does, if you don't know that, okay, this just converts speech to text, then you'll spend more time thinking about whether this is the right service or not. So it's better that with whatever services, I think there are 50-60 services, you at least know for the uncommon services, at least what they do at a high level. It will take you like maybe a couple of hours just to know what it does, but it will save you a lot of time while preparing for the exam. So I highly recommend that um, you read through all the services. Then you can also go through the AWS official practice test. It's a set of 25 questions, I think, and it's free, so you can go through that. The one service that is not in the exam blueprint, but I saw questions, at least a couple of questions, was on AWS control tower. Now that the landing zone has been depreciated by AWS, there's a lot of focus on AWS control tower. So please go through that. I've also read other blogs where they talk about a few questions coming from AWS control tower. In terms of the white papers, one white paper I found really useful. Maybe I was not so great at multi VPC AWS network, but I found it really useful. Is this one? So please go through this one. Then I also briefly skimmed through AWS storage services. It's pretty much we know most of the things, but it's no harm in just going through this one. And then overview of Amazon Web Services white paper. So this ties back to this one, the third point I was mentioning. Uh, if you don't want to go through each individual service, just go through the services that are there in this white paper based on the scope of this exam and just read it for each service, like take 5 minutes. I think that should be good enough. Okay, so based on my experience, what is the core focus of exam? The core focus is on AWS implementation at an enterprise or organization level. So everything you're trying to study, you need to think from the enterprise organizational perspective, how it's going to be implemented. So how does that change the learning exam pattern vis-a-vis AWS solution arc as said? So as I said, the focus is on global setup. So services like multi-account, cross-region services such as AWS organization, SSO. SSO is critical. Control tower. Then why do we need a centralized egress VPC? To save cost on the NAT, network services, VPC endpoints. How do we centralize them? So it's critical to know in a multi-account setup why we need this kind of a VPC structure to save cost, right? Now, if you're looking at regional services, you still need to focus on global deployment of these services. So what I mean, let me give you an example. Say you are looking at database deployment and it is giving you options between RDS and Aurora. Now, the question says that you need an RT of less than 1 minute. Now, in case of Aurora or RDS, say MySQL, both you will create cross-region replicas, but in Aurora, the failover it happens in an automated fashion. So it's going to be less than 1 minute. But in case of RDS MySQL, you will need, while as you create a regional replica, you will need to uh, shift to that region and make that read replica primary manually. So it's going to take at least 5 minutes. So this is how you need to think about how these services are going to be used at a regional level. Now, another key question is on CloudFront. Say CloudFront has two origins, S3 and ELB. For S3, we all know we are going to use origin access identity, which is like an IAM role to not allow users directly access S3 and go come through CloudFront. Similarly, how do you allow it for ELB? For the ELB, you will need to add some kind of a custom header which is allowed in the CloudFront to make sure that users do not directly access the ELB, and then those custom headers can be checked at the ELB end, or you can use some other services uh, like WAF to make sure that yeah, that ELB is not directly accessed. Okay, and now how to share services with partner uh, organizations in case of overlapping silos. So let me just show you quickly, just to give you an insight on what are the kind of questions that you can expect. So here you see if they have overlapping siders, what you can do is you'll have a consumer VPC and you will have a producer VPC. Then you create you use a network load balancer, then you use the endpoint service, and here you use the interface endpoint. So this is how you can uh, look at it. Now the another example is, we have all used NLB, ALB, and what they do when we were preparing for our AWS solution or exam, right? But what we need to know, if we are going to do a multi-region deployment with say ALB and NLB, how we can enable that through Route 53 or Global Accelerator. In what case you use Global Accelerator, what case you would use Route 53. Similarly, copy snapshot copy for say EBS or Redshift, right? We already know how we can share those snapshots across accounts. But how do we do that across the regions? How does the KMS come into play? Do we need to create a new key in a different region? So every service that we study, we need to focus from the global deployment perspective, cross-region deployment, right? Then hybrid architecture, that's very, very important. It looks at DNS, direct connect transit gateways. You look at it from high availability, redundancy, cost perspective. And that's where this white paper comes in really, really handy. I really like this white paper. Then from the migration planning, you need to understand when to use data sync, when would you use Snow family. So you need to be clear the use case for each of them, SMS, then DMS. So you need to be clear on from that perspective. So the typical question that it will give in this scenario is, okay, they have a direct connect and this is the spare bandwidth. So what do you use? Do you use data sync or do you use the Snow family? And you have a timeline of say 3 days or 2 weeks, then you can decide based on those scenarios. Then cost optimization I think is really, really important, but it's all intertwined between services. But cost optimization and redundancy, so those two terms you will hear in a lot of questions, and then make a decision based on those parameters. Okay, so I think those were the key tips. So in next set of videos, what I'll do is in the first one, I think this is the one I'm talking about. I'll talk about like 10 key concepts. I'll not get in detail, but just from my perspective, I made a couple of hundred notes, pages of notes. So from those, I have picked like 10 key concepts that you must know. So I'll briefly talk about them, and then you can read them in more detail to be sure, because I'm pretty sure that most of the concepts that I highlight would be uh, tested in the exam. So then third one is CloudFront, fourth one compute, database, networking, and management services. So please subscribe and like if you like the video. Thank you very much.